Good evening, everybody. Welcome to LongShotsTV. Tony TheRhino with Donnie right side. How you doing, Donnie?
Doing good. Another week. Let's get busy.
All right, let's get busy. We're going to talk a little college football and a little bit of NFL tonight. Just run down some games. If you guys got any questions, please get in the chat and let us know. We'd appreciate it. Please don't forget to follow the page as well. At the end of the game or end of the show, we will be giving you the LongShotsTV college football play of the week. We are 4-1 on those so far, giving them out, and we're going to continue to roll with another great one tonight. All right, Donnie, let's get her started. Why don't we just jump right in with that Mississippi State-Alabama game?
I mean, interesting game, Mississippi State, Alabama this weekend. If you look at Alabama, the question is not are they good, not can they cover the spread, but which team is going to come to play.
Right.
Typically, Nick Saban teams, one of the better prepared teams in the country. The only question is they had a Super Bowl type atmosphere last week with LSU, pulling that game out and winning, making them the clear favorite now to win the SEC and go on to the Final Four. They don't need style points anymore, Tony. They just have to win football games.
Right.
So my only question is how dialed in are they going to be if they can get, an early lead and just sit on it, or maybe they have to come from behind a little bit. Mississippi State with a nice victory last week versus Texas A&M. It's a very high line. It's one of those games, Tony, you say, do I step in front of that locomotive that's steamrolling down the tracks like Alabama is, or are you going to play that sharp angle and say, I think they might be a little bit sleepy here. Me, for one, I won't be anywhere near this game, but that's the question you're going to have to ask yourself if you want to lay that much.
Yeah, I'm not fond of that game as well, but just to help you guys out there, Mississippi State is 8-4 against the spread versus Alabama since 92. So Calvin Ridley is upgraded to probable. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it as far as injuries go. So, yeah, that's a tough game to try to lay in.
28.5. I mean, you're over 4 touchdowns in this one. You're basically, this is one of those games at 28.5. I actually would have liked to see if Alabama had lost last week, because then you might have bumped them out of that top 4, and then it's all about style points, which we're probably going to cover a game a little bit later in the show with Louisville and Wake Forest. It's the same type of angle, but a reverse on that one. So if Alabama lost last week, they probably turn on the afterburners in one of those typical Alabama 51-10 ball games. But since they won last week, the pressure's off, and they just have to win football games now.
Yeah, they're not one to run the score up either. All right, let's jump down to Penn State, Indiana. Indiana's getting 7.5. This is a Big Ten matchup, and it should be fairly interesting as far as a good grind-out game. It's not the two greatest football teams, but Penn State has kind of righted the ship so far this season, and they are 8-1 straight up against Indiana since 92. So what do you see out of that one, Donnie?
Yeah, Penn State's hit the afterburners lately. I mean, I'm not a big Penn State fan as it is, even though I'm from the East Coast. But they have played really good football. I mean, if you're going to knock off Ohio State, they got drubbed early in the season by Michigan, bounced back on their season rather nicely. Indiana's a sneaky good football team. I mean, if you look at them, don't look at the win-loss record. They hung around with Ohio State at Ohio State, which is tough to do. Lost a heartbreaker to Nebraska, also within 10 points at Northwestern as well. Beat Maryland, and then snuck out one with Rutgers, which Rutgers with the new quarterback is actually playing decent football. But the line actually is a little bit scary, because you're looking at Penn State, who again is playing really good football, beating up teams, beating them easily, and obviously last week with them beating up Iowa pretty handily in that one. I would tend to lean towards the home team getting 7.5 here. Anything less than 7, you probably would lean Penn State. But I just think Indiana's a good, solid football team, and give me more than a touchdown at home, I would lean that way in this one.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, let's jump over to West Virginia at Texas. I really took a hard look at this game. I kind of like it. I think I have definitely an opinion on this one, but I'm going to hold that as a premium pick. Donnie, what do you see out of this one?
I mean, a high-scoring affair. I mean, the one thing that we talked earlier about when we were prepping for the show is, it doesn't matter who Texas plays. They typically play them tight, and they play them high-scoring. The one thing that you want to look at is West Virginia is going on the road to Texas. If you want to go back a couple weeks, West Virginia went on the road and played one of the most prolific offenses in the country in Texas Tech and handled them pretty well. In these type of situations, I don't actually like to look at who's home and who's away, because in the Big 12, it's who's going to bring defense. West Virginia is going to bring the defense. Texas is not. I would lean West Virginia in this situation, even though that line is Texas -1.5. Texas is 5-4. Virginia is running away at 7-1. I still lean West Virginia here because I can't back a team that doesn't play defense versus a team that plays pretty good defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's talk a little Baylor, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's getting 18 or giving up 18 at home, 17 on some of the lines I see out there. What happened to Baylor, Donnie? I mean, they just kind of fell apart.
I mean, it's a pretty interesting situation. I mean, having nice wins over Oklahoma State and blowing teams away like Kansas. Struggle with Iowa State on the road, which every once in a while a good team's going to go on the road in conference and going to have a struggle play. Losing to Texas by 1 in a shootout, and then not even showing up at home versus TCU, which was a shocker last week. They were favored by 7 points. I know the wheels were coming off the wagon a little bit there, but nobody saw a 40-point loss last week. It's hard to trust Baylor in this situation, but as I say that, and being the gambler I am, it's a buy low, sell high type of an environment here.
Right.
If they don't lose by 40 last week, Tony, and let's just say they lost by 7 points, you might be looking at this game Oklahoma -11 or 12, but they know the public is going to jump on one side, a hot Oklahoma team, even though they still have 2 losses as well. Right. I look for Baylor to hang around in this one. If that over-under is 80 points, obviously it's going to be a lot of scoring in this one. They're looking for Baylor to put up points as well. I lean towards getting the 18 on the road here, Tony.
Awesome. Okay, good point. Let's jump right down next to that is Kentucky, Tennessee. This is a game I've been watching too. It's an interesting game. Tennessee giving up 14 at home against Kentucky. Kentucky, they run the ball well against Tennessee. I kind of would lean towards Kentucky in this if I was just looking at it on the face value.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Kentucky took a tough loss in their last SEC game, dropping them to 5-4 overall in the season. They actually were in control of the SEC East if they had won that football game versus Georgia, which they had the lead and ended up losing 27-24. They beat Missouri. Missouri's not a great football team. Beat Mississippi State in a high-scoring one, 40-38. Beat Vanderbilt 20-13. In the SEC East, it's just about winning football games because they're going to get annihilated by the West. But it's still a nice accomplishment because that is a basketball school, and if they can get in to the SEC championship game, that's quite an accomplishment there for Stoops. I'm with you again, Tony. If you can get 14 points in this game, I would lean towards Kentucky here. Tennessee in a bit of turmoil, team meetings, it's not going right. Great players are quitting that football team out of nowhere and just leaving. Yeah. They have been banged up quite a bit with injuries. Can Butch Jones circle the wagons at this point and get him over the hump? I don't look at the Tennessee Tech game last week, 55-0, being anything that said, whew, man, we got our, train back on the tracks, because losing to South Carolina on the road, getting drilled by Alabama, losing to A&M the week before, that was 3 straight losses. And again, I don't think Tennessee Tech is the team that gets you on track, because I really don't know how much of a stress that was beating them at home. I look for the 14 points here. I think, winning out for Tennessee here, but again, I don't trust Tennessee as far as I can throw them laying more than 2 touchdowns. It's just as simple as it gets,
All right. Let's jump down there. Army and Notre Dame. I wanted to touch on this one because I had Navy last week. Navy
great call,
beat them. And, how do you think Notre Dame responds this week? They're giving up 14 at home. Do they come back and cover that?
It's not even at home. It's a Shamrock Series game in San Antonio. So they're on the road again. They said same thing last week. They played. They call it their Shamrock Series, is where they go and geography points,
right.
use it for recruiting. It's a smart move, and they have fans everywhere, so they're going to sell out. But again, there's nothing like being a true home game in your own stadium where you're used to the surroundings. They're going in the Alamo Dome. It's not even an outdoor facility. It's not on grass. It's just your typical dome atmosphere. Army's going to come to play football. You saw them last week struggle with the triple option. Yep. Obviously, Navy is a better football team overall than Army. But again, do you trust Notre Dame in a possession? How can I word this? In a game, I was looking for something that you weren't going to have a lot of possessions in this. Last week, Notre Dame had 6 possessions, scored on 5. They lost the game. You're going to look at more of the same here. In a game, let's just say, Tony, if Navy was a high-flying team and each team got 14 possessions like, a Tulsa would give you or a Memphis would give you, it's a different story. But if you're going to say Notre Dame's going to get 8 possessions and they need to beat me by 14 or more points, I'm going to lean towards Army, even though they don't have the athletes to stack up. They're not as good as Navy. But again, it's not a home game, and you're laying 2 touchdowns versus a team that is going to slow the clock down. And all it takes is for Army Tony, to get 3 or 4 first downs in a row, that's 7 minutes off the clock.
Yeah, and Army should have been looking at that Navy film and studying that one real hard.
Yeah.
Should give them a heads up. All right, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has given up 11.5 to 12.5 in some books. What do you see here, Donnie?
Scoring, and more scoring. It's one of the games, like Texas Tech. I haven't bet a Texas Tech game, since Mike Leach and the whole run and shoot and, Cliff Kingsbury, because you can't quite figure out what they're going to do. They're going to score points, but they're not going to stop anybody. They're the type of games that if you bet against Texas Tech and you're up 17 points, you blink your eye and it's already a tie game. The same can be said if they have a 17-point lead. They play literally no defense whatsoever. So in these type of games, I'm not the right handicapper to say, I lean towards this and that. The one thing I do lean towards is a lot of points. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm not laying a 90-point total and going over. So I would just say, as the contrarian, give me the under, give me 2 or 3 stops in the red zone, and you're not covering 90.
Okay. All right, let's jump down to Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech giving up 14 at home. I wouldn't know which way to go on this one, Donnie. These are two of those teams that I generally just kind of stay away from.
They usually play close games, Tony. Mills is going to miss this one. That's their lead fullback who actually leads the team in rushing with 578 yards, 5.1 clip. He's the engine that makes it go. Similar if you watch Navy, Tony, it's always the fullback that's going to get everything underway. That averages that carry, gets the ball 7 to 8 times a game, but picks up 50 to 60 yards on about 5 to 6 yards per carry. They didn't look good versus North Carolina. Looked okay against Duke, 38-35. Looked okay against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is not that normal Georgia Southern team that you're looking at. Virginia Tech is a very well-coached defensive team. Bud Foster's been there, 30 years. He knows all about this Georgia Tech option. Even though they are laying 14 points, I think Virginia Tech can smother them, and that game is going to come in right around that number. If you're asking me to take a side here, I probably would lean Virginia Tech just because I don't think there's much value anymore on that Georgia Tech option this year anyway.
Yeah. Ricky Covers agreed with your angle on the Baylor game, and he's wishing for them to bounce back this week.
Yeah, hey, take the 18 points, man. Put it this way, if Oklahoma wins by 35, it is what it is, but give me the 18 points with a team that can score points against a team that gives up a lot of points. Give me the 18.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Auburn at Georgia. Georgia plus 10 at home against number 9 Auburn. Generally, these are two teams that play each other pretty tough, and it's a great matchup, a good game to watch. Do you have a lean on this one?
Not really. I mean, the line is about where it is. It's hard in the SEC to go and beat anybody on the road as it is. Auburn does have to turn up the gas a little bit because they need a little bit of help from, in Alabama. Maybe if they get another loss, or if they get a loss because Auburn's going to see them in the Iron Bowl in a couple weeks. I know, Sean White's been banged up at quarterback, so it's hard for me to lay double digits on the road in the SEC. If you're asking me to pick a side in this one, I think Auburn wins the football game, but I think Georgia can keep it close here.
I agree with you. I mean, Georgia's 2-0 against the spread.
Yeah.
Versus Auburn over the last 3 seasons, so that's going to be it's always a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, Auburn does come in banged up. Petway, obviously the lead running back, is banged up a little bit. Same thing with a starting quarterback. That's not really a recipe that I like to cover 10 points or double digits on the road.
Yeah. All right, the one I've been dying to get to here, Pittsburgh at Clemson. The line's at 20.5 in favor of Clemson, obviously. Pittsburgh's a decent running team. Like we were talking earlier, though, they can't stop anybody. Let's see. Defensively, I was looking for the yards per play. 6.2 yards per play is Pittsburgh, and 6.3 for Clemson. What do you think there, Don?
Yeah, Deshaun Watson got banged up a little bit in their last game. They didn't really miss him much, hammering Syracuse 54-0. Tough place to play. I know they walk through that NC State game and almost got beat there, but they did beat Louisville at home as well. Again, they're in another position, Tony, similar to what we talked about earlier with Alabama. Style points aren't required for them anymore. They just have to keep racking up the wins no matter what the cost will be. The one thing about Pittsburgh is they don't stop anybody, but they can score. So when it all boils down to this game, let's just say right now on the board, Clemson is favored by 21.5. The thought process in your mind should be if they're down 28 points, can they score that backdoor touchdown? I think they can do it. In a big spread situation like this with a team that can score points, I lean towards going Pittsburgh, especially as we said again, Tony, with Clemson. No style points required anymore. Just win.
Well, even though they're as banged up as they are, I mean, Pittsburgh is really got a lot of players busted up, and most of them I see, they're not expected to make the game. So, would you?
Yeah,
still
I mean,
go
it's
that
the
way?
same situation with Miami. I gave Miami out as a premium play last week just because I thought Miami was a good spot at home. It's obviously hard to win on the road anyway when you're playing a decent team. But again, Pittsburgh doesn't stop anybody. But that was a completely different situation where Miami had to cover 4 points.
Right.
And they beat them up pretty good, but there was a touch and go period there where it didn't look so hot at that point. I just think if Clemson is on the gas, meaning up 30 in the fourth quarter, Deshaun Watson's coming out, especially if he's a little bit banged up in his shoulder, so you're going to get that backup quarterback. I just lean towards more as, if the game is late, it's 28 points, and there's 4 minutes to go, I think Pittsburgh can punch it in for one score to get them over the top.
Awesome. All right, and then the game that we were referring to earlier, Wake Forest at Louisville. Louisville is giving up 34.5 to 35 in some books. Wow, that's a lot of points to cover, Donnie.
Ton of points to cover. Now, a couple days ago, I looked at that spread and I said if it was at 34.5, I said if it hits 35, I'm going to take Wake Forest. Well, it hit 35, and it's hovering between 34.5 and 35.5, depending on what book, so we'll just call it 35. It sounds like a no-brainer because the simple fact, if you look at Wake Forest, the way they play, the type of game they like to get into, it's a lower-scoring game. If you look at them going on the road at Florida State, high-powered team, blowing out a good defensive team tonight with BC, but they held them to 17 points and lost 17-6. It's what they do. High-scoring team in Virginia. They beat them last week at home. They also lost at Army at home, but again, in a lower-scoring game, 21-13. The only question that is still in my mind right now, Tony, which I have a problem with, is the style points factor. Alabama and Clemson don't need it. Louisville's on the outside looking in. So the first thing, and Petrino already said it last week, saying, it's a shame, if you look at our schedule, we only lost to Clemson at Clemson. We're sitting at, I don't even know what they're at, maybe 5 or 6 at this point. They have to run the table and run the table big. So Lamar Jackson is going to be playing in this fourth quarter, regardless if it's a 7-point game or a 47-point game. That's something I'm going to have to weigh overnight to see which way I want to go, because Wake Forest is 6-3. They're a good football team. They were bowl eligible. They just became bowl eligible last week. So how invested are they in this game? But it's a good coach team with a good defense that can stop the run. It's going to be an interesting factor I'm going to have to take a look at tonight.
All right, well, you heard it there. That's definitely a game that's going to be on the radar. So
35 points with a really good football team. It's amazing that it's there, but when the odds makers set the line, you can see why they did that.
Yeah. All right, number 24 and number 25 matchup as LSU goes to Arkansas, and Arkansas is +7 at home. This is another game that's going to be really interesting. I do have a side on this game. What are you looking at, Donnie, on your end?
Yeah, same thing. We talked about Alabama before. Again, it always seems to come back to them. How does LSU get up for this game? That was a deflating loss at home. Played in that game right up to the end, just couldn't get over the hump. They didn't show much offense on this one, but obviously when you're playing Arkansas on the road, it's a little bit different of an animal than playing Alabama on defense. They should be able to score a bit here. I just look towards the home team. They played very well versus Florida last week. I'm not sure what shape LSU is in. They're going to bring the defense, no question about it, maybe a lower type scoring game. Give me the home team with about a touchdown here. I would lean towards going that way.
Okay, yeah. Arkansas is 15-9 against the spread since '92. LSU is 14-10 straight up since '92. But over the last 3 seasons, Arkansas is 2-0 straight up and against the spread. So that kind of tells you a little bit there. And the last game went under the total as well. So I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I do think it's going to be a grind-out battle.
Sure. I can see that.
Ricky says Louisville had some ridiculous spreads of late. Yeah, you're right, Ricky. They have. But they're a powerhouse team. There's no doubt about that.
And they've covered them, too. If you look at that NC State game, when they turn it on, same thing with BC, which I don't think BC is very good, but BC has a good defense, shredded that team.
Oh, yeah. But, they and rightly so. They're a powerhouse. They're going to get those kind of lines. You're not going to see that, though, I don't think, going out the rest of the season. Ricky says he's had reports that Fournette will get an easy time running over this D. Boy, I don't know about that. I don't think anybody's going to give him an easy time, but there's no doubt that Fournette is an incredible back. I mean, what do you think, Tommy? Do you think
I thought Arkansas played well last week. I mean,
yeah.
I actually had Florida and gave Florida out last week in a premium play. I went 4-2 last Saturday. That was one of the losses I had. And I was really impressed with Arkansas, the way they played. Now, I know they were coming off a bye, but their quarterback, Allen, was still a little bit banged up. They ran the football well. They played good defense. They did what they had to do. And, again, we're talking LSU here, not exactly an offensive powerhouse. I know they had been playing well before the Alabama game. But, again, you can't underestimate how much steam comes out of a team. We've all been there on teams, throughout our playing days. Obviously not playing at that high of a level, but when you play your rival, it's at home. This is your shot to make it big time, and you lose. You head out to the practice field next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That juice isn't there. It's just human nature.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about number 20, USC going into Washington. Washington's favored 7.5 at home. This is a game that we will talk about at the end of the show. For our pick of the week. But USC at Washington, Donnie, what's your take on this game?
I love both of these teams. I mean, you couldn't have told me a month ago or a month and a half ago that USC was going to rebound and be 6-3. It looked like they were headed to fire Clay Helton after that Utah game. They didn't look good at all, but they switch over to Darnold, and he's been fantastic. Washington, you know me, Tony. I've been high on Washington all year long. They have exactly what you need to win a championship. Great defensive line, great offensive line, great coach, quarterback, running back, and a set of wide receivers. They should be able to run the table out there in the Pac-12. USC is going to give them a battle because USC has athletes like any other team in the country has athletes. And the spread has dropped from 9 to about 7.5 at this point. I still would lean towards Washington because it's a tough place to play. I mean, back earlier in the season, Stanford was ranked in the top 10 and got washed 44-6.
Right.
I don't obviously see that type of ball game here, but I do lean towards Washington at home in a really tough situation.
Yep. All right. I'll give you my take on it at the end of the show. All right, let's see. Let's jump down to last one of the college games. California at Washington State. Washington State's favored by 14.5, 15 at home against a good Cal team. What do you see there, Don?
I see Washington State scoring at will. Washington State now can run the football and throw the football. Cal doesn't stop anybody on the ground, and they barely can stop anybody in the air. If you saw that game versus Washington, Washington did whatever they wanted to them, throwing reverses, flea flickers, running wild, just whatever they wanted. And I think Washington's going to be more of the same. I don't really like a side per se because Cal always has the advantage to come through that back door late in the game if they're getting more than 2 touchdowns, which it looks like they are. So it's kind of crazy the way it's going to play out. But if you have like a team total, if the Washington team total is like 48.5 or under, take the over in that one. Washington's going to get into the 50s just because they're going to score every single time they have the football.
All right. We'll jump over to the NFL here, but before we do that, let's give a shout out to all the vets on this Veterans Day. Appreciate your service, guys, and we have this great country because of you. So thank you very much for your service. All right, let's jump over to the NFL. We're going to be very picky and choosy here about the games that we talk about today for this weekend. But we're going to jump down and talk about, let's go Denver at New Orleans. New Orleans is actually favored by 2.5 to 3. Against that tough Denver defense. What do you think, Don?
Game's not even on my radar at this point. I don't really like the situation the way it sets up. New Orleans doesn't play any defense, but Denver has a terrible offense. And Denver has a great defense. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy when you look at both of those teams. But the one thing I never do is bet against Drew Brees at home, especially when the line is -3 or if he's getting points or anything less than 7. Because it usually it doesn't matter how good your defense is, Drew Brees is going to beat your defense. It's just a matter of, can Denver put up points? I mean, Denver has 2 fantastic wide receivers, but the quarterback is atrocious. And they lost C.J. Anderson, who would have been a huge player in this ball game, literally getting $1.25 to $1.50 off the ground. They're going to lean on Devontae Booker, who is injured with a banged-up shoulder. I would just take New Orleans here just because they're at home, and he's very tough at home. And for the simple fact is, I don't think Simeon's a good enough quarterback to get it done.
Oh, All games played at New Orleans since 1992. Denver is 2-0 against the spread and straight up. So, interesting note. All right, let's talk about. Let's go Kansas City at Carolina. Carolina is -3 there. This looks to be a fairly decent game as far as a decent matchup, and it should be an interesting game. Compared to what we've been seeing lately, it's just getting a little bit ridiculous. But Carolina is 1-1 against the spread versus Kansas City, so we'll see how that plays out. Do you have a preference there, Donnie?
I would lean Carolina in that one. Carolina's a good team at home. Jeremy Maclin's going to sit this one out for Kansas City. Alex Smith, after getting his head knocked off, is going to return to this game. But Carolina, again, is at home. The line is about a field goal. I would lean towards Carolina there.
All right. And let's see. How about Green Bay, Tennessee? Tennessee's they're getting 3 points at home against Green Bay. Green Bay's tough anywhere they play, but that line just seems a little fishy to me, Donnie.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you look at Tennessee last week, tough loss. But the problem I don't like in this one, in order to bet Tennessee, is Mariota's ankle seems to be giving him problems. Same thing with Delaney Walker. It's always hard to bet against Green Bay just because it's Aaron Rodgers, but they have 0 running backs there, and they throw the ball, just about the entire game and heading on the road. I guess I would lean towards Green Bay just because the line is so low at -3. But I'll be staying far away from this one. I'm not a big fan of taking a road team in the NFL and laying any points whatsoever. But I just don't know enough about the health status of Mariota and Delaney Walker. And, of course, with DeMarco Murray's toe's been banged up lately as well. I would just stay away from this one. But I would have a slight lean with Green Bay.
All right. What do you think about San Francisco and Arizona? Arizona is getting 15 on some lines at home against San Francisco. I mean, is that a legitimate?
It's going to be right around that number because, Arizona is going to probably have a lead of, at least 21 points at some point in that game. It's just how much do they care about covering that line? Anytime you have double digits in the NFL, I don't care who it is or who's playing football, it's extremely hard to cover that double-digit line. But San Francisco is atrocious, and Arizona is coming off a bye looking to right the ship. I just think David Johnson might get 30 touches for 270 yards and run away with this thing. If you can get 14, I would lean towards Arizona here.
All right. And let's talk Seattle and New England. New England's favored by 7.5 to 9 on depending on what book you're looking at. But, Seattle just hasn't been the team that that we have been used to the last few years, at least not a team that's been to the Super Bowl and went into the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. Tom Brady comes back out and picks right up where he left off, and they're firing away. I mean, does Seattle even have a chance here?
Excuse me. New England coming off the bye and getting healthy, that should just send, tingles up your spine anywhere for any NFL team that's going to go into that situation, because that's not what you look for. A hard-fought game last week with Seattle and Buffalo, very controversial the way it ended.
Yeah.
And New England was just sitting at home, relaxing, and getting ready for this one. This is one of those games where at 7.5, I can see it leaning towards Seattle. They're a good football team. They're getting healthy as well. Jimmy Graham looks like he's rounding back into form, as well as obviously Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson. I'm skipping a beat on this one.
Yeah.
But he's getting healthy too. His lead looked really good versus Buffalo last week. It's one of those where I can see either side. I would lean towards New England, but I wouldn't want the 7.5. I would want a little bit less than that, so you might want to buy that. Usually it's cost maybe -15 to get that. I would lean New England at home coming off a bye. There's no better person in the entire league at getting a football team ready than Bill Belichick. That's the way I would lean there.
Okay. Sounds like an easy one. But you know what they say about easy ones, right? All right. Okay, guys, that's our coverage for the college and NFL games for this week. Hope we enlightened you a little bit or maybe helped you out a little bit. You can always contact us. You can contact Donnie Rightside at DonnieRightside.com or at TrendBetting.com. You can get a hold of us at LongShots here at LongShotsTV. And, of course, you can get a hold of me, the Rhino, at TrendBetting.com as well. Come over and join us at Facebook and search for the group Trend Betters. A lot of great groups in there. Okay, time for the college football play of the week from LongShots TV. And this week our play is Washington, USC, under 62. Put it in the bank, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's have a great week, Donnie, and look forward to talking to you next week, brother. Hope your plays are great and you win them all this week.
Let's do it, man. We'll talk again soon, Tony. Appreciate the time tonight.
All right. Thanks for joining us at Long Shots. Take a shot with Long Shots, guys. We are the game. Even get surprised.